So welcome everybody. Welcome to what month are we in? August meetup group. Sorry, we got to do it kind of like this, virtually. At some point, hopefully we'll be back at Nottingham's, our local restaurant or bar here locally. This is the first time you are tuning in to the Real Estate Investor Incubator meetup group. Welcome. Glad you're here. Introduce yourself. A little bit about yourself, where you're from, things like that, your investment strategy. In the chat box, we're going to try to keep this as interactive as possible. I know that's challenging to do, but we're going to do our best. Ryan's going to come up here, or going to start this presentation here in a second. He's from Camaplan. For those that you don't know him, he'll introduce himself here in a second. And again, he's got a presentation, but we can, we can all kind of follow along and ask questions. We want to try to keep this as interactive as possible. So a few different ways you can ask questions. You can either put it in the chat box and we'll make sure we go through all those. Or if you want, you can actually raise your hand inside Zoom. And by doing so, we can unmute you and things like that. I think I have to physically unmute you through the admin portal. I'm not sure if you can do it yourself, but we'll figure that out. I want to make sure everyone has a chance to answer any questions that you can. Personally, I love this topic. I think it's a topic that isn't as sexy as it should be, right? Because there's so many different things. And if you have your own self-directed IRA or your own retirement account, even with a little bit of money, you can obviously still utilize lots of different strategies, and it's a really good mechanism to grow. So that's kind of one side of it. The other side of it is raising capital through syndications or through private lenders who have money through self-directed IRAs. When my business partner Chris and I started in 2007, we felt like that was a really easy way for us to go raise capital, mostly because we didn't have any of our own money. We didn't know a lot of people with money, and a lot of people that we approached with capital, a lot of people don't have that much liquid investable capital just kind of sitting around ready to put into a deal. But when we chatted with a lot of them, they did have some sort of retirement vehicle that they would be willing to invest into our private notes and into real estate deals and things like that. So that was we luckily stumbled across that, and, kind of fast forward, there's $10-15 million probably of our lending portfolio that's through some sort of self-directed IRA. So anyways, we'll let Ryan hop in. Ian, you got anything else to say real quick related to that, and we'll get him going?
No, the biggest thing is, this is transferable across all asset classes inside of real estate and potentially other asset classes that you can utilize this self-direction for. As Jay said, Nottingham's, we usually had a drink or two out there. So I'm having a drink. I know Jay's having a drink, trying to make this as close to Nottingham's as possible. You guys have questions, throw them in the chat. We will get to you or raise your hand, and we'll bring you on screen if that's what you choose to do. And I'll take the time to introduce Ryan, a few of our investors. This is not a sales pitch. He's actually our vendor. We utilize him on a day-to-day basis. He's not here to sell anything. I'm not here to sell anything. We're here to provide you with information. And I can tell you my funds directly are with Ryan personally that I self-direct there. And their company's awesome, and that's why we wanted to share the information. So Ryan, if you want to introduce yourself and jump right into it.
Great, sure. I appreciate the introduction, and thanks for having me back. I know we've done some stuff in the past. Glad to be back, in the mix of things here after this stuff came back. I'm Brian Fischer with Camaplan. We do obviously self-directed retirement accounts. I'm going to get into that, but I want to start with there's two ways to use this. Well, there's more ways than that, but I'm going to give you two ways you can use it on both sides of the house. The first one is, and we'll go more into this in detail in the presentation. The first one is personally using your retirement account to make tax-free income or tax-deferred income, for the rest of your life. The other way is to raise capital, as Jason was saying with this, if you're looking to do more real estate. I assume most of these people that you're working with, Jason, would do more deals if they had more money, just like you guys do it and raise the money and do your due diligence to lend it. So let's just get right into it. And I have to just say a quick disclosure, like Ian said, pretty similar. This is all for educational purposes. Camel Plan does not provide any investment advice, tax or legal advice. You got to do all your own due diligence before making an investment. We don't endorse anybody. Like Ian said, we've worked together, but it's still your job to do your due diligence on Jason and Ian, for example. So what is a self-directed IRA? There's a bunch of definitions out there, but basically a self-directed IRA lets you invest in anything that you want that the IRS doesn't prohibit. And in a few slides, I'm going to show you that. The rules are the same. So this is a misconception out there. Fidelity, well, I don't want to call anybody out. Brokerage houses will tell you that you have a self-directed IRA. But what they mean by that is, hey, here's our list of stocks, bonds, mutual funds. You can direct it in anything that you want that's on our list. But if you say, hey, I'd like to lend hard money bankers money, they're going to say, well, they're not on my list. I want to buy 123 Ocean Ave. Well, that's not on our list either. So they're only going to let you direct it into what they sell, right? All the rules are the same with any brokerage house that are with, like an IRA is an IRA to the IRS, and the rules have been defined. The difference is we don't limit you and we don't have anything to sell. You're bringing what you're trying to do to us for investment purposes, obviously. So the big things we deal with are in private lending and real estate and private placements, you know, people raising money and things just like Jason and Ian. As it says there, transfers, rollover, distributions, contributions, all that stuff is reported the same as it would be at a brokerage house. So this is what we see the majority of our clients investing in: real estate, precious metals, notes and mortgages. Again, another big field. I'm going to go through some slides quickly after this and you'll see it, but that secured, unsecured, me, myself, I like secured notes. And then private placements, which is another big field, which is where Jason and Ian are coming from there with private funds raising money and then lending funds out there. Do you want to say anything about private placements there, Jason?
Wolf time is weird now.
Sorry, go ahead.
I said, did you want to say anything about private placements?
No, I think we can. I think maybe we'll.
Well, just for those that don't know, some people, you know, when he's talking about, Brian just confirmed, when you're talking about real estate, you're talking about their IRA actually owning the real estate versus a private placement where someone invests in an apartment building or a storage facility and someone else is running the deal and they're just a partner in that deal with like limited say in what the deal is doing. Correct?
Correct, because I run into this a lot, I would say, because I mean, you know this, Ian, you do a lot of real estate, and real estate is work, and some people don't have the time or the energy depending on their age and what they're doing. For example, and I have a slide on this in here, but you know, the physician, the doctor that has to be in there doing surgery might have a couple $1 million in his retirement account, but he has to show up and do surgery. So the real estate is a lot, but they look and they want to diversify and they say, hey, well, I can lend money here secured to real estate, but these guys are going to do the work. And all I do is have to, you know, sign some papers here and I'm going to collect X interest and things. So it is appealing to a lot of people, but obviously that depends on their time and where they are in their life and what they have going on. But let's keep moving here. I'm not going to read all these. I'm just putting these up for you guys to just see it quick there. You can do all types of real estate. You're not limited. Raw land, commercial, residential, single family, all types of real estate. Again, like I said, notes and mortgages, There's, discounted notes that people will buy from banks or other investors. You can make your own promissory note and say, hey, I want to, lend my buddy John X dollars for, maybe he's trying to grow his business, for example, and he needs money to grow that. So that's another big field. And then we'll go back to the private placements, the LLCs, the limited partnerships. This is a really big field, and this is where a lot of people raise money with the PPMs.
Yeah, I think in a second we're going to kind of talk about breaking these down and kind of how the process works of rolling over funds into self-directed IRA, talking about direction of investments, of exactly how to fund one of these deals. But I think the purpose of Ryan's slide right now is, listen, you got a lot of flexibility, right? You can invest in businesses, you can invest in real estate. These can be flips, these can be rentals. You can joint venture with somebody. There's a lot of allowable investments, and obviously there's a lot of benefit to potentially taking your own IRA money and controlling it, right? And,
yeah.
Instead of, wouldn't you, for the most part, and maybe I'm wrong, but my opinion is I'd rather trust my own personal money and invest it. We're all active real estate investors typically, so I'd rather direct it actively into one of my investment transactions than just leave it in a brokerage account or your 401k, your normal 401k company that for the most part is going to keep it probably in equities, maybe in some bonds and things like that. You get full control doing it this way. So I think this is helpful to at least show that you'd be surprised. There's a lot of things that you can really get creative with to invest in.
Absolutely. And I agree, but I feel like people, if they, and I have a slide on this, if they are familiar with a product, like we know that we don't have any control over Wall Street, or depending on who we are, we have little control over it. This lets you get to invest in something that you know and understand. And I have that quote on a slide here coming up shortly. But the IRS, and this is no different. I mean, IRAs were created in the 70s, and the rules, this is what the IRS says you can't invest in: collectibles and life insurance, right? So that includes, works of art and booze and that kind of stuff. Like I said, that I'm putting that exception up there because I mentioned precious metals. They let you invest in, precious metals there: gold, silver, platinum, and palladium. Does need to be, the nines pure, but that's it. So there's a lot of unique situations. Have I had somebody invest in a Christmas tree farm? Yes. Have I had somebody invest in coffee beans in Costa Rica? Have I had someone invest in a dump truck, commercial dump truck that they rent out, to a construction company? There's random things like that, but most of us are all here in, the private lending and real estate world. So I'm not going to, waste our time on that. Well, not waste our time, but we don't need to go into that. And if somebody does have a question, for something, they can talk to me after that. All right. So you can use all these types of accounts, right? You have your tax deferred on the left-hand side and the tax-free on the right. I'm a big fan of the Roth IRA, big fan of the health savings account. If you qualify for that, you'll see an example here with the Roth and the traditional and you personally here on the next slide. But the health savings account is one of the best if you can use it, because you actually get to put money in tax deferred. And when you take that money out, it's tax free. So if you do qualify for that, I would highly recommend looking into that and starting one of those. Even if you're not going to have enough money to do it, to do real estate, I would look at it. And then, you can always move accounts around, but I would definitely encourage anyone that qualifies to look into that. So let's look at this. I call this the 4 types of money. Obviously, everybody needs to make some money to live. But the W-2 salary money is some of the worst money you can make. right? And I just did this roughly off $100,000, right? So no matter what you do in this field, Uncle Sam is going to say you owe him money, right? So if you make 100, you're going to end up with around 60-ish, right? If it was passive income, you can cut out the Social Security and Medicare, you're going to save around another 15%, right? So you end up with 75. Your tax deferred accounts, you're going to keep 100% of it. But obviously, when you go take that out at some point, you're going to, owe taxes on it. And like I said, why the tax-free accounts, you pay putting the money in and you don't pay taking it out. You get to keep 100%. So if you turn your 100,000 into 10 million, when you take that 10 million out, you get to keep it. And here's what it looks like on a chart. Oh, what happened there? Oh, crap. That got cut out of this presentation. All right, I'll actually pull that up in a. You know what? Let me.
You don't have that in that slide.
The Roth IRA is the one that like Peter Thiel and Mitt Romney are under fire for, because that's, they made all their money early on when they were broke and they had some money in a Roth. They invested it into shares into their company and it grew exponentially, tax free, right? So that was
a lot of folks, if they have the ability to, try to set up try to do this in a Roth, because after that it's growing, and not taxed after the fact. So that's typically, I know Ryan can't make recommendations, and I guess I can't really either, but that's what a lot of people do.
All right, and I'll go back to that presentation. Is my chart back up on your guys' side?
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So this is what it looks like from a financial standpoint, and I did this with a 10% return and a 30% tax bracket. Okay, so I had $50,000 in a Roth IRA right here. Right. Let me grab a pen. Is it there? Right. So I have my 50,000 in my Roth IRA. Gosh dang it. It's not clicking it.
We can see your pointer.
You can. All right. I was trying to get the little.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, 50,000 in your Roth IRA, 50,000 in your traditional or any tax deferred account, and then this is you personally. Okay. Like I said, with a 10% return, same investment. Say you bought 3 houses right next to each other and they rented for the same, right? So you end up over here in your Roth with 2.2 million. You still end up with 2.2 million in your traditional IRA, but you have to pay Uncle Sam his 30% bracket. And like I said, I don't know where that's going to be when you go to take that money out. That's a variable, and I don't like that variable. And I don't know where everybody is on this presentation, but the government seems to raise taxes. They've already said they're going to raise them. We know what they are now. So I encourage everybody, even if you're just going to put a contribution in, everybody on this call today should have a Roth IRA and start contributing to it. I think it's going to benefit you. I mean, think if you had, for example, Jason, if your parents started a Roth IRA for you when you were 2 years old, say, that'd be pretty nice. And they invested it and they made money. It would be a real benefit to help grow wealth for your family. So I say, look at that and look at it for your kids and grandkids. You do have to have earned income to be able to contribute. So figure that out with your accountant and things. But I definitely think it's something everyone should have. And who knows if they'll get rid of it, but at least if you had one, you'll still have one.
But hey, Ryan, let's talk about this a little bit. And even though no, this isn't 100% geared toward self-directed IRAs, it is related to IRAs in general. What are the limits for a Roth typically? Do they vary, or or is there a limit that you can contribute to? Because let's say somebody doesn't have one right now.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have one, but you know what? I know I need one, even if it's not a big amount, and that'll be my seed capital, let's just say, to buy a property. Is that a specific CPA question or in general, what are the
No,
limits?
I can do that. And we have them on our website, camaplan.com. Underneath Resource Center, there's a category that says contribution limits. And then let's lead this also into non-recourse loans while you brought that up. The limits depend on the account. So the Roth and the traditional IRA, for example, if you're under 50 years old, you can put $6,000 in. And while people are like, am I going to waste my time here? Yes, it's going to build up over time. And that's why the sooner you start them, the better, right? If you're over 50, the IRS gives you an extra 1,000. So 7,000. But there are other ones and a lot of times people are bringing these from 401ks, SEPs, Simples. Those all have higher contribution limits or other, like say a doctor could have a defined benefit plan and contributing 200,000 to it, for example, right? There's other accounts that allow the SEP, I think gives you a 59 or 59.5. There's ways to do it. You do want to talk. I'm not giving you advice as to what account you want, but you do want to have whatever accounts work for you. And I do want to make this clear for a lot of people. This changed, I think, back in 2010. Anybody can have a Roth. So if you heard back in the day, you make too much money to have a Roth, that's not true. Anybody can have a Roth. You can convert to a Roth. For example, Jason could take his 401k or let's just say traditional IRA and say, hey, I want to convert my $500,000 over to my Roth IRA and then keep growing that from there, right? So anybody can have it. There is no limit on conversions. So you could take your tax deferred account, convert it to the Roth. No big deal. If you make too much money to contribute, which we have a lot of clients that do, they have two accounts with us. They have a traditional IRA and they have a Roth IRA. They may have more, but anyway, they contribute their $6,000 or $7,000 every year to their traditional IRA, and then they fill out the conversion form, and we convert it the next day to their Roth IRA, and then they keep doing everything out of their Roth. So everybody can take advantage of these accounts, assuming, like I said before, you do have to be alive and have earned income. If it's inherited IRA, you can't contribute anymore, but everybody should look at doing that.
So
when you say convert, just to be clear, because there's a question down here, when you're converting, you are paying a tax at that point to convert it to the Roth, correct?
Yes. So basically, to clear that up from a tax kind of aspect, you're going to get a 1099 for X dollars that you convert. If you converted it with Camaplan, we're going to give you a 1099 and you're going to owe the taxes on X dollars.
Right.
But it's going to grow tax-free for the rest of your life. So that's why I'm saying, if you want to look at it, do you want to convert back here on your $50,000 that'll turn into 2.2, or your tax defer? I think you should use a combination of both of these accounts too. Or go all Roth. I think that's the best thing, at least at the moment. And look at the HSA, obviously, but look at the difference: 748,000 versus 1.5 and 2.2. Right? This is really where you're going to grow your wealth. So I think that it's important that everybody looks at this and understands this, because I have people that come to me and they're like, man, I wish I knew this stuff. Depending on their age, 10, 20, 30 years ago, they're like, hey, geez, I mean, this stuff should be taught in schools, but instead, schools are saying, don't worry about taxes. It's kind of ridiculous that we don't teach this to everybody, because it's one of the most powerful wealth building tools out there.
Yep.
In my opinion.
Yeah, I sit around the firehouse table because unfortunately, we have a 457 plan, so we can't self-direct. But we do have the option of Roth or traditional. And I will sell everyone on here on this one point. I tell all of them guys, go Roth. Like it's going to grow tax free. You're dealing with your tax implication today, and you don't have to worry about what it's going to be tomorrow. We can at least predict what you're getting taxed on today. So I agree with you 100%.
And let me break something down real quick and then ask a question related to this as well. So I did see a question related to, I think it was Scott that asked this. And yeah, I think this account comparison, it doesn't look like they're adding additional funds, but they're just compounding their interest. That's all that is compounding it, right, Ryan? They're reinvesting.
Correct. Yeah,
like
I said,
they're just reinvesting the proceeds at 10%. So, year one, you put $50,000 in. At the end of year one, you got, 55,000, and then you get 10% off 55,000. And it's a really, really, really powerful tool. So let's, I want to go back a little bit just because I think some of this stuff's important. Related to the Roth in general. So there is and correct me if I'm wrong, but there is an income on contributing to your Roth. But if you have that barrier and you cannot contribute to a Roth, you can contribute to your traditional, right? So you put $6,000 into your traditional. After you have that $6,000 into that, you roll that over to the Roth. Yes, you're going to have to pay the taxes, right? Well, I guess you're not paying. Wait, you're not paying the taxes because there was no gains. So, right.
Well, now you're going to, now you put the 6,000 into your.
Oh yeah, because you're putting the 6 in tax free.
Like I said,
so yeah,
you're going to get that 1099 for whatever you convert. But yeah, so you convert the 6,000 or 7,000, and then everything that makes for the rest of your life is tax free.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because there's an argument. I agree with the Roth, and I personally have a case study myself that I did that. But there is an argument that, hey, there's a huge tax consequence, and depending on how big your, that is, let's say you've worked your whole life and you've contributed to a traditional 401k, and now you want to roll it over to a Roth. That could be a substantial tax consequence right now. And yes, moving forward, it's tax free, right? But there is an argument on that. I remember years ago when we rolled over some small traditional IRAs that we had from other companies, and we converted them to Roths, and we paid the tax on it, and it sucked because we had to write a check for it. But since that day, all of those funds have been growing tax-free over and over and over and over, and investing into deals, investing into syndications, investing into businesses, things like that. So, and we kind of started this conversation with, it's not the sexiest topic, but it is the sexiest topic, right? It's not the sexiest topic in real time, right? Especially if you're starting out. It's like, whoop-de-doo, I got $6,000 that isn't liquid, that I'm investing in a deal in. But we all saw the math on that previous page. It adds up, especially if you have kids starting, getting creative, potentially start something for them.
Well, it's the best example. Me and Jay talk about the snowball, right? Like the book about Warren Buffett. That slide right there that you had up was the most prime example of a snowball in real time. So go ahead, Ryan. Let's continue on.
Yeah, absolutely. So to give someone an example like this, right? Dr. John invests, $1.5 million into a syndication, let's say. Syndication is another word for PPM. They're, private placement memorandums. And he's going to collect 10% on his money every month, right? And he doesn't have, he has to do the due diligence and make sure that he's investing in a good project. And maybe he's investing into, a $50 million apartment complex, right? He's going to make $12,500. There is no, Wall Street risk. There is no change. That's what the paperwork says. And, his annual return on his money is $150,000. I just can't see why someone wouldn't want to look into diversifying their funds when they know what they're getting, and depending on the deal, obviously you could be secured or unsecured to the deal. I mean, PPMs, depending on how long they are, I'm just kind of making this up, but the first 50 pages are going to tell you, you can lose your money. And then the next 20 are going to tell you, well, here's our plan and here's why we don't think we're going to lose it. And if everything works out, this should be that. And there may even be a return on top of 1%, depending on the deal. So you really just have to look at it. It's not a hard thing. The problem I find is people don't know about it and they wish they knew about it sooner. So I'm glad to, bring this to attention of the people that you work with, because I think it's going to really benefit them in the future. So let's just look at this one, something as simple as buying, a house for X dollars and, collecting, rental income. And obviously I'm keeping this very simple. Obviously, if you had some repairs, the hot water heater breaks. Well, if the IRA owns it 100%, the IRA is responsible for it. So it would pay that. So I just did this real quick to just, show, okay, well, you just make your 24,000. Yeah, if you have some repairs, you got to paint it, you're going to have some expenses. So it could be less than that. But I just wanted to have a visual for people here. And it just makes sense to know what your return is. I think people like the security. Like if you know the neighborhood, you know what the house rents for, and give or take, okay, the economy could do worse. Well, maybe you get a little less. Economy does better, maybe you get a little bit more, but you have a range. You know that you're not, waking up to a fund that was, $85 on Friday and 32 cents on Monday because something happened, right? This is secure. People need a roof over their head, and it's something predictable. So if anybody has any questions there, let me know.
Real quick.
And I think people do best in what they know, right? Invest in what you know and understand and can control versus using hope. I've talked to so many people over the years, and not everybody, and there's some people that do really well on Wall Street, but they want to diversify. But a lot of people have said, I don't even know. I give it to my brokerage person and I hope they make me money. And hope is what I'm stressing there. Do you think hope is a good strategy? You hope you make money, right? When I buy a stock, I may have researched that company and I may see X, Y, and Z of why this is good, but I have no control. I'm hoping that their plan works and I'm hoping that I'm going to make money. I have no guarantee, right? But I have a guarantee that somebody's going. I mean, obviously there's evictions and things too, but at least I still have the property. There's risk in everything that we do, but that's what we want to do, is mitigate our risk. Hey, I know this neighborhood. I know this. I can take this money and collect X dollars a month unless, something really bad happens, let's say. But it's more control and understanding of what you're getting into.
Hey, Ryan, I'm going to go, and I know we're skipping around with questions, and we'll get to your questions, but Kareem has a pretty good one that I want to make sure it's clear for everybody. He wrote, who manages and selects the rental property? So let's be clear that this is your account, self-directed. So you're the one that is directing the investments of what you choose. So think about this. Think about you having $100,000 in an IRA and you buy a property. And let's say the property costs $90,000. Well, the owner of the property is your self-directed IRA. So when you put it under contract, you're not going to put it under contract as Kareem Phillips. You're going to put it under contract as, and I don't know how Ryan's is set up, but
Camel Plan FBO, Kareem's IRA.
Yeah. Camel Plan FBO, Kareem's IRA. So that's actually going to be the owner of the real estate. If you're lending out, that's the owner of the note. If you're invested in a syndication, That's the owner of your interest. The self-directed IRA is the owner, not you personally. And we're going to talk about it, and I'm sure he has disqualified persons that are going to be coming up in self-dealing. I'm sure he's got a slide related to that. But in essence, you're buying that property for $90,000 with your self-directed IRA. It's the owner of the property. Let's say it's a rental property. The rents come in, it gets deposited back to the IRA, right? Let's say you get $1,000, it goes back to the IRA. Let's say you have an expense, you have a heating bill. Well, the IRA pays BG&E for that. Everything goes in and out. Yes, it might get a little bit clunky, but it's kind of like its own business entity that's operating it. You are not writing the check and you're not collecting the rents yourself personally, right? I'm not saying you're not doing the keystrokes, but it's not doing that. You can't use your IRA and lend it or invest in a property and then rent comes in and you deposit in your personal account. That's self-dealing. That's not what this is about. This is just like anything else. This is a retirement plan. The purpose of it is to keep the money and to grow the asset. So hopefully that clarifies that a little bit. You choose the investments. Now, if you deal with, a turnkey provider that does turnkey investments, sure, you can buy it that way. You don't have to, be the one in charge of it. But I just wanted to clear that up a little bit. And if you want to add to that too, Ryan, feel free.
Yeah, I'll elaborate a little to that, and everything that you're saying is right there. But to make it really clear to everyone, you do want to look at your IRA as its own entity. It is its own entity. It is not you. It is not your social security number. When you fill out the application and stuff, it's you. But as far as investment wise, it is not you. It's going to be the Camel Plan IRA name. Just like when a brokerage house buys a stock, they buy it in, their name for benefit of you as well. But your IRA at Camel Plan is going to be its own entity in the Camel Plan name, and it's going to get its own tax ID number, right? It's because obviously, say they lent you money, Jason, and you give them a K1. Well, if you gave them a K1 to their social security number, they'd be paying taxes on that money. No, it's going to go to a tax ID number for their IRA, which is going to be exempt. So yes, you do want to, just similar to like an LLC, for example, that you would set up an LLC for, a lot of people do that for personal investments, right? Well, you can look at this the same way. Your IRA is its own entity as well. If your IRA gets sued, for example, you're not getting sued. Your IRA is getting sued, right? It's not you. And that's why people will set up for personal protection and they can't come after anything else that the IRA doesn't own because it's not you. They can't come after your personal home, your boat, your cars, because why? It's not you. It's your IRA. So it is separated as a different entity. And we don't need to go into that case, but or if somebody has questions on that later on, but yes, consider the IRA its own entity.
I'm going to unmute Veronica real quick to ask her question. One other thing related to this though, is let's say you don't have the full amount of money in there, right? Let's say your IRA has 50,000, you're buying a property for 100,000. You can technically still get a loan and debt. And we could talk about that. It's a little bit more advanced, but that's very, very common.
Well, you want to
talk about that real quick and then
let's talk about that. I'm gonna start that conversation off and then I'm gonna let you chime in. So with an IRA, your IRA can get a loan. Now it needs to be a non-recourse loan. For those that aren't familiar with that term, it's kind of like what it sounds. There is no recourse. Like I was saying before, if your IRA gets a loan, the property is at risk, right? Your lender can only take the property. They can't go after you personally. There is no personal guarantee to go after your house and your car and everything because it's not you, it's the IRA. So you guys do this with our clients and give non-recourse loans. The terms, and a lot of this is done on a case-to-case basis. I'll let Jason kind of elaborate on that. But yes, your IRA can get a loan, but most likely, and I don't want to speak for any bank, there are some private banks and credit unions out there as well that will do it. But it's very tough because I don't want to bust on the banks, but they don't get it and they don't want real estate. It's not their business. But Jason can vouch for this when he speaks. He would gladly lend you, you know, if you were buying $100,000 house, and let's assume all the numbers make sense and it's worth 100,000, and you're putting 50,000 in and you're asking him for 50. If you didn't pay him back, he's going to get a, you know, $100,000 property for $50,000. Why wouldn't he do that deal? Right. But go ahead, Jason. I'll let you take it from there.
And that's typically the number at a reduced LTV, 50 LTV. We'll do a non-recourse loan just because, you know, in essence, having additional equity is better than a personal guarantee anyways, right? We'll take the risk. But actually, I want to put this right back on you with a question related to the way that that IRA is taxed. What is it, UBIT or something related to your IRA, you still have to technically pay tax on the leverage piece. Is that accurate?
All right. So yes, there is what they call UBIT and UDFI. UBIT is unrelated business income tax. And that's if you were running a business out of your IRA. And I'll actually break out into a little quick point before I go to the UDFI. So running a business, for example, is like flipping, for example, would be a business. If you took your IRA personally and were flipping properties, they would consider that a business because you have inventory in and you have inventory out. Now, let's say they lent you money, for example, and you were flipping properties, Ian, right? Well, that's not considered a business because they made a loan to Ian LLC, right? And Ian LLC went and flipped the properties. So that was an investment. They made a promissory note, most likely, to say, hey, I'm lending X dollars at X% for this. And they kept doing it. So you always want to look at structure depending on what you're doing. But the non-recourse loan is pretty straightforward. You're going to, and that's the unrelated debt financing income. And the form for both of these, just so everyone's aware, if they want to look at it or ask their accountant or, you know, professionals, the form is 990T. T as in Tom. 990T is the form for an IRA to pay taxes if the circumstances apply. But otherwise, a lot of the times you can do what you're trying to do. Sometimes you might have to structure it differently. But there's plenty of people that would said, hey, if I had the money sitting in my checking account and I did the deal, I would, like, it's not a bad thing. There's articles out there that would be like both sides of the fence on this from different, you know, financial people, institutions, whatever. Like, well, why would you do that out of there if you're going to pay taxes? Well, somebody might say, all right, well, yeah, I don't have, you know, $400,000 in my retirement account, or sorry, personal account, but I do have 400,000 in my retirement account. So I'm going to use that because I can do this deal. And if I did it outside, I'd still be paying taxes. So why not do it with this? And like I said, you're going to talk to your accountant. There's an equation. You also get depreciation on the borrowed amount. You know, the stuff that's in the IRA, you wouldn't pay on, but you're going to pay on there. And then you're going to get depreciation for X dollars. Even though it's an IRA, if you bought it 100%, you don't get that. But in my opinion, it's not a bad deal. If the deal makes sense, look at the numbers, and there's plenty of people that do it. That's obviously why it exists.
And Ryan, just correct me if I'm wrong, and then we can move on. And I know everyone's situation is very, very different. But hopefully this is a broad statement and hopefully it's accurate. Let's say you buy a property for 100 grand, you get 50,000 out of your self-directed IRA, puts up the 50, you finance 50, and let's say it's a flip, right? And you flip the house and you make $30,000. Um, 15 goes tax free to your IRA, and 15 you're getting taxed on. It's still going to go in back to your IRA, but your IRA is going to have a tax implication.
No, it's not going to be.
It's not like that.
It's not going to be that exact number, because, like I said, your IRA will get its 50% back tax free, but you're going to pay. You're going to pay. And I don't want to quote IRS rules and where stuff has changed. You're going to most likely pay less than. You're only going to pay on that borrowed 50%. So you're going to be paying taxes only on that 50,000. So it's not going to be split even. Your IRA is going to get its 50 fully, and then you're going to pay that minus depreciation. And like I said, there's an equation your accountant will do for you. So it's going to be most likely less.
Yeah, it's still beneficial.
Yeah.
Right. And all right, Veronica, if you can unmute, I'm gonna answer your question but we can keep. But if you have other ones, we can go to. So she wrote, once you sell a property, how long do you have to return back to a self-directed IRA? So you're not borrowing money from your self-directed IRA. This isn't a loan against your self-directed IRA. The self-directed IRA is the owner of the property and the real estate. So when you sell the property, Camera Plan FBO Veronica Estrada is the owner of 123 Main Street. So when you sell that property, all of the money is going back into your IRA.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
The transaction, the title company's not sending Veronica the money. The money's going to come back to her Camera Plan account. But to her point, they do it. You can only do it once a year. They do allow you to take a distribution of your account, and you have 60 days to put that money back in. Otherwise, if you're under 59 and a half, you'd have a 10% penalty and pay the taxes. But I don't think that's where she was going, but just to let her know, you always can take money out and contributions out without any penalties.
So what is a loan?
No, not as a loan. You're right. You can't loan yourself money, but for example, Jason, if you took $100,000 out of your IRA right now today, you have 60 days. It's a 60-day rollover. Okay. You have 60. So you could take that money out if you had a quick deal or you were doing something, but you have 60 days to get that money back into, a qualified plan / retirement account, IRA, whatever you want to call it. But you can only do that once every 12 months.
I mean, if that's the case, that's a really good hack, right? You have a short-term deal. Let's say you have $100,000.
But you're going to get taxed on that money. So unless you need the money to live on, you could take that money out, do it, and keep whatever you did and put X dollars back in. But, otherwise, do you want to make it and then say, now, well, instead of $100,000, I have $120,000 to do the next deal with. So, but that's everybody's personal preference there. It is a little bit of an in between if something doesn't work out.
I understand. Because it's going to show up as ordinary income personally. Yep. If you do, I understand I understand what you're saying.
So you're not going to get the tax benefit. You're going to pay.
Yeah. And Veronica, anything else related to that? Or are you good?
No, he has answered my questions, and I really appreciate the information. I'm currently doing projects, some under the self-directed IRA, and the orientation that you're given is tremendously very helpful. I know that a lot of title companies are not familiar, and I have had the struggle where they have issued the money to me and then it has to go back, and it's a total nightmare. And I also have actually Delta will love the contact info again, so that way we could connect and to see what are your fees in order to roll over my plan over to you and avoid these issues in the future. So thank you so much for this.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thanks for your questions. I don't know how to remove this little line here right now. So we'll just deal with it, but we're close to the end anyway. So again, with prohibited transactions, and I have a little chart here afterwards. The main two things to take away from real estate: no self-dealing, no personal use, right? You can't buy the house with your IRA and live in it. Here's prohibited people. You can't buy your house and rent it to your kid, for example, or your parents, right? So lineal, ascent, and descent, you see it there. You could buy a house and rent it to your brother or sister or, you know, nieces, nephews, cousins, Ian, Jason, whatever. You're all good there. Is this me or my presentation putting these marks on?
Oh, someone's having fun. I mean, my kids are running around the house. They might be drawing on it. Who knows? So,
All right. Well, let's just keep going. So why do you need us? Well, the only reason we're in business is because the IRS doesn't trust you with their own money. Imagine that. And look at how much debt they're in, right? The reason is they require you to have a third party, custodian, administrator to hold these accounts because they don't trust you with it. Again, we're a neutral third party. We don't give any investment advice. Back to that question before, we don't have any houses for you to sell. Talk to Ian or Jason on that type of stuff. But we're just the vehicle that allows you to use those funds for this, alternative investment space. And that's really all we work in. How easy is this to do? I'm going to put my contact information up. Anybody who has other questions that we didn't answer tonight or we'll get to can do it. But literally it takes about 15 minutes online. You're going to go through the enrollment process on Camel. I mean, you can print out a PDF if you want to do that too. But you do it online, takes about 15 minutes. You'll fund your account either through a rollover, a transfer, or a contribution. Choose your investment. Fill out the investment paperwork in the name of your IRA. We'll sign off for it. You'll log in online, and where you used to see, Apple stock, you now see XYZ, 123 Main Street for $300,000 or whatever it is, right? So you'll just see your investment. It's very simple. It's not complicated. I mean, we do it all the time, obviously, and we have thousands of clients. So I'm sure that if that many people can figure it out, you can.
Ryan, let me ask you a question, because I know, after these things are obviously rolled over and they're a client of yours, are you able to give them, and again, this isn't like advice. I'm not saying like give them advice, but like recommendations as if they're doing things compliant or not compliant. Like for instance, I got $50,000 and I structured this deal, and my friend has $50,000 and we want to buy this deal together. What's the best way to do it? Things like that, because a lot of folks just aren't sure the best way to structure it. Just because they have the money liquid and it's in their, this kind of sounds funny to say, but like, the hard part's still getting a deal together, putting a deal together, finding a good property, finding a good rental property, finding someone to lend money to, right? After you have the funds in place, you still got to make sure, you're making a sound decision and you're deploying your capital into the right thing. Are you able to, explain, say, hey, you should structure it like this?
Where you go. I know where you're going with that. Okay. The answer is no. And like I said, we can't give any investment, tax, or legal advice. However, I have seen a lot of clients structure many different deals, and I would lead into something like that and say, hey, well, here's how I've seen someone else do something similar. But no, I'm always, I will, help where I can help, but no, I can't give the advice and say, hey, here's how you should structure this. Like I said, we're a neutral third party, but we have seen a lot of things out there. To go back to the first part of the question, so it's their responsibility to make sure that they're staying compliant. We can only do so much. Like if you said, hey, I'm going to lend, my dad money, we're going to tell you, well, that's prohibited. You can't do it. But let's say, somebody might have a different last name, and we're like, oh, all right, well, they're lending to whoever. But, names could be different. People could be divorced, that kind of stuff. We can't catch everyone. It's not our job to. It's their job to make sure that they're doing everything compliant. We'll help where we can. If we obviously, oh, you're buying a house for your kid in college, well, he can't live there, right?
Yeah, I think that's where I was getting at is if, because people don't know, right? It's like, oh yeah, my son's buying a property. I just want to lend him money. I'm not involved in it. Well, that's,
your son's going to be a prohibited person.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's more what I mean. I'm not saying like, hey, let's structure and enable them to. More of like, if you see something they shouldn't be doing, you step in.
Well, I mean, if it's something we can see, but like I said, that responsibility falls on them, because let's say, a girl's married, but she wants to lend her mom money and we don't see it's a different name. How would we know? For example, right? So, it would just look like, hey, she's lending someone else money. So they're responsible to make sure that they keep it compliant. We can only help so much. But I just wanted to put this slide up too. Like I said, everything is done in the IRA's name. You can substitute your name for your account number if you want to. That's why I put the account number there, because some people don't want their name on things. All the funds with us, doesn't matter the amount, everything's FDIC insured. We put this up here because we don't really have a minimum, but it's going to be hard to do something with less than $4,000. You can say, hey, well, I want to start this and I want to make contributions every month and start building it up. It's fine. Or you can do it somewhere else and then move it over when you have more money. The movement of the funds, and this can be done more quickly. I usually say plan on 2 weeks. Sometimes it's longer, depending on the, certain other custodians out there. But usually you should have your money within 2 weeks of opening the account and filling out the funding paperwork. Our timeline is 48 hours from when you give us investment paperwork. And this is for those of you that don't believe me out here, you can look at this. If you have a problem sleeping, read publication 590 there. That goes over all the IRS rules, defines personal property and stuff. And like I said, Form 990T here is there if you're in that circumstance. But otherwise, here's my contact information. R. Fischer, Fischer's with a C, so don't make that mistake. Otherwise, I won't get it. rfischer@camoplan.com. You can reach us toll free at 866-559-4430. And if you email me, I can, when I send you an email, you can get my cell, my work cell and everything as well. I have a lot of people across the country that, will get a hold of me after office hours. So it's not a bother, and, you're welcome to, contact me.
Ryan, I want to run through, well, first off, I want to say thank you for getting through that. There's a ton of good information in there, and I know it's really hard in our time constraints, but if you're good for another 20 minutes or so, there's a couple really good questions in here that I want to hit. One of them, Kareem has been blasting us over here because he does have a really valid question. Let's say you're, let me sum it up, is you buy a rental property in your IRA. Who can manage that? And the day-to-day operations of that rental property. Can you manage it, or do you need a third-party vendor to manage that property since it's your IRA?
All right, that's actually a really good question. I'm glad he asked that. So the word, I'm going to back up a little bit here as I go into that answer. The word manage means something different to you, me, and everyone else here on this presentation today, right? You're managing it. You're the owner. You're directing it. We don't do anything without you telling us what to do, right? Now, that doesn't mean that you can go in and paint the walls, okay? And I'm just going to use paint the walls for the example, swing the hammer, whatever you want to call it. You can pick the color to paint the walls. You can go in and inspect it, but let's just say your IRA owns it 100%. And you can partner, by the way, with IRAs or your wife's IRA or your friend's IRA or your personal money. Everybody should look at on our website 20 ways to fund a deal. I know we don't have enough time to go into all that today, but take a look at it. That'll make sense. But back to the question there. No, you can't go in and paint the walls. You're a prohibited person. Can you come in and look at, you can pick the painter. And again, that can't be a prohibited person. You can't buy a house with your IRA and say, oh, my dad has a painting company. I want his company to paint it. No, we just told you he's prohibited. But John Doe off the street, yes, you can hire him and he can paint the walls and the IRA would pay for it.
Got it. So in the end, there's kind of like a gray area that you could technically manage it, but you can't necessarily go in there and fix it and be the day-to-day guy. And I think the reason Kareem's asking is because he owns a property management company, or he's a property manager for 30 plus years. So I think that's why he's asking.
I was actually to go into that. So if he took his personal IRA and bought a property, he could not hire his company. Like I said, a prohibited person's linear ascent, descent. Actually, I think I left this out. Or any business or entity you own 50% or more of or have control of is a prohibited entity. So no, you can't hire your property management company to do it, but you could hire another property management company to manage the property.
Ryan,
Sorry,
what if he was just collecting rents and like, basic
Or
stuff?
he's not collecting rents. The rents are just getting sent back to. I mean, he could take the check and mail it to our office if that's what you're asking. But why would he subject himself to that much work? He would just tell the tenant, just like anybody would, just like a property management company. The tenants send the check to the property management company, but in this case, they send it to Camoplan. So
yeah, but like also, and I've I've been involved and seen a lot of these as well, and I get it. Like there's, it's, I don't want to say there's a gray area, but like it's like, well, should I be doing this or should I not be doing this? Like, what about like lease signing, for instance? Like, hey, I got a tenant.
They could give them the lease and then email it back to our office. That's why I said the word manage is kind of like it's like you're saying a gray area you had mentioned. So yes, they're quote unquote managing it, but there's certain things they can do and not do. It's kind of like, for example, let's just back up to a brokerage house. Well, you're telling them to buy this mutual fund or this stock, right? Well, you're buying this property and you're getting this lease signed. So I agree, and it is a little bit of a gray area. And I will mention this just so I don't like to make people nervous and be like, oh, there's a whole big thing. There is no IRA jail. Okay, I kind of joke around with that. The worst thing if you did something prohibited, the worst thing if you're under 59 and a half, you have a 10% penalty and you pay the taxes, it would get distributed at whatever X dollars it is. But most of this stuff is pretty good. Because this field has been growing, and I tell people, and there's the indirect rule, which states, because people will say, well, what if I lend him money and he lends me money back, for example, right? Well, you can't do that. The IRS says anything you can do indirectly, you can do directly, right? And they are cracking down on, I don't want to say that there's not a lot of audits of IRAs in the past. Like, it's been very minimal, but supposedly because this has been a growing field, and like I think you guys have probably seen that in the news that they are ramping up more audit, and that just is speaking across the board, not necessarily for this, but this is going to be obviously involved in it. So you do want to make sure that you're doing everything right. And I tell people, just do it right from the beginning. talk to your accountants, talk to your attorneys or other professional advisors. And yes, will you have to spend a little bit of money? But my dad always said, it's better to spend the money up front than it is to try to fix something on the back end, because it's going to be much more timely and costly. So do it right from the beginning. And I think everybody should, do that and consult with their professionals to make sure. Like I said, I can't give them the advice. So talk with those that can. A lot of the stuff is pretty straightforward. If somebody lends you money, Jason, or lends you money, Ian, like it's pretty straightforward. Like, hey, here's the documents, or here's, okay, you're lending me X dollars on this house that I'm going to flip and I'm going to pay you this. Like that stuff is pretty straightforward. They don't have to really worry about guidance stuff as far as that's concerned, because that's already there and they're not doing anything. They're not managing anything. They're lending you money. That's a very simple, easy thing. They can't, really get themselves in trouble there,
Yeah, no, that all makes sense. And I think if anyone has like deeper clarification, like specific type ones, Ryan, be happy to jump on a call with you and discuss before you do something, just to say, hey, I'm going to buy this investment property. I want to find the tenants for it. Does this make sense? Ryan will definitely take the time with you to make sure, it's right, and then go on. So.
And they can find the tenants, but back to your, question, like, can I use my property management company to find the tenants? No.
Right. But you personally could. So do you do checkbook IRAs or SESA accounts?
Yeah. They can do checkbook IRAs through us. And yeah.
And is SESA account the same? I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with that one.
I don't, I'm not sure what that is.
Spear, you want
SEP or SESA?
CESA. I don't know. I feel like I've heard that before. Spear, if you want to text me or shoot a question down there.
I mean, they can use, health savings accounts, educational saving accounts, SEPs, simples, but that might be a retirement plan or a pension. It's not probably a pension plan, but there are different kind of like 401k and defined benefit plans. It could be a different one of those.
It might be a military account, because like we have a 457 plan, and I know some of the military's TSA, but I don't know, Scott,
No,
if you got that, shoot me or Jason.
The thrift savings plans are fine. The TSPs.
Yeah.
I mean, anything that's federal, it's more like you were saying, if it's a state plan, like the one you have with the fire department, that's specific to your state. So it's not federal. So it's not on federal guidelines. But if it's a federal plan, which, the military plans would be, or I would assume, but maybe they have some different things out there. But yeah, if it's a federal plan that falls under those guidelines, then it'll be fine.
Since we beat up real estate pretty good, Scott Spear had a question somewhere in here. I think the classic car part was a joke, but maybe not. But can you utilize your IRA to invest in crypto? I know that was a recent hot topic.
Yes, and we've had, like I said, the IRS, and they haven't ruled on that, at least as far as I know. Like I said, they have their guidelines of what's prohibited, and that's collectibles and life insurance. Cryptocurrency wasn't even around in the 70s when they invented these, obviously, and they haven't come out and ruled and said that you haven't. So yes, people have been investing in crypto. You would need to do that through that checkbook LLC that you're talking about, though, because obviously they're going to need a wallet and a bank account, and they're not going to have a bank account with Camel Plan. They're going to have, a bank account at wherever they open up that checkbook LLC, so that they can be in control of that. Again, that goes back to the management, and they would obviously be the ones making the decision there. There's attorneys that we've worked with in the past that have set this up. They're on our website under references, but contact me personally, and I'll shed more light on that. It's not as simple as you think. Obviously, you're going to jump through some hoops, but we do it.
I think you hit this one. There's two more questions that I want to get to before we roll out. One is, can I loan my IRA funds to my friend using a promissory note with interest, repayment timeline, and then reloan it to a company that you're a part owner of? And I think you covered it. If you're owner more than 50%, you can't loan it to your company, correct?
Yeah. So, who's ever questioned that is, go to our website, and again, www.camaplan.com, and underneath Resource Center, click Prohibited Transactions. Scroll down past that chart that I showed you. There's going to be numbers 1 through 10. Read them all, but pay attention to numbers 5 through 10. That's going to define part of it, because there's somebody that says, well, I'm 1% of the company. Well, that's fine. So, well, I mean, depending on your titles and things too, that depends. So look at that. We won't go through all of that because that's pretty detailed, but just read those 1 through 10. That'll most likely give you your answer. And then obviously you can check with, your CPA as your certain circumstances, as far as that.
And I would assume those bullet points, the other question, actually, there's one more question that I want to put in there, but from Jason, is there any no-nos or things that you've seen to trigger audits inside your IRA, or has it just been completely random at this point?
To my knowledge, it's been pretty random. I mean, like one of our clients, he's a very wealthy client, and he said he gets audited every, couple of years or 3 or 4 years, just because they keep doing it to him because of how much he makes. And he came back fine, and his IRA and everything came back fine. He's careful with it, and he does it because he knows he's prone to, and he's been through it a few times. But I mean, I can't speak for the IRS. It's random. Like, I don't know. It's not really a question I can answer.
Yeah, I think a fair statement is we don't know what our government's going to do anymore. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. So we can respect that answer. Last question I got before we roll out, when we were talking about UBIT, which I know gets to become a crazy topic, that was if, you're buying a house. But if you're investing in a PPM or a syndication and those sponsors are taking debt, is your IRA going to be exposed to UBIT?
Again, I don't want to be the attorney here. That's going to depend on the structure. If it is taking debt, then most likely yes, but I don't know the exact structure. So just, anybody who's kind of doing those funds most likely will know, because they're going to be working with an attorney and a CPA. And, I've seen people structure deals differently. They might have somebody raising money and that company has debt, but then this is going to give money to this. Like, there's different scenarios out there. So again, that's kind of more of a detailed question, get all the details there as to what. And like I said, you can look at Form 990T and the guidelines there, and, that'll help you answer those questions.
Yeah, man, I really, really appreciate you jumping on here and discussing all these things. I know it can get super confusing because it's almost too simple and too easy. But then that also triggers a whole lot of gray lines and blurred lines. So we appreciate you getting through all this. Your contact information's up here. And again, just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, and to anyone in your network that does want to open an account, just let them email me, and we'll waive the $50 application fee for anyone that's part of your network there or with us tonight. When they open an account, just have them do that, or they obviously are hearing it from me. Let me know that you were on here and you're part of their network, and we'll waive that for you guys.
Sweet.
Appreciate that, man.
Sweet. I appreciate it, Ryan. Thanks everybody who's tuning in. Thanks again for Ryan. We'll all give you a silent round of applause since everyone's muted. Thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you guys got a lot. You have Ryan's contact information. If you need anything, utilize him as a resource. Feel free to reach out to him. Our next meetup group will be September 15th. It's the third Wednesday every month. Anyone has an idea of a speaker or a topic, happy to
Present a case study. We're here.
yeah, happy to help. We try to kind of diversify this into a lot of different things between residential real estate and commercial real estate, and a lot of different service providers. So feel free to reach out to either myself or Ian, Jason at hardmoneybankers.com, Ian at equitywarehouse.com. If you have any recommendations, again, we're probably going to be virtual again. And, there's obviously some cons for it, but there's also pros. It makes it a little bit, easy. You don't have to leave the house during rush hour and things like that. So if you need anything, feel free to reach out, and definitely utilize Ryan as a resource. Ian and I have, and he's good and knows his stuff. And there's a lot of things to navigate, right? There's a lot of moving pieces. I've had my self-directed IRA for over 15 years. I've raised capital through our lending company with other people's self-directed IRAs, and we're still learning new things every day. So definitely do so. So appreciate everybody for coming out, and hope to see everybody next month.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And if obviously anybody needs any other questions answered, get in contact with me, and look forward to the information at your next meeting, guys.
Excellent. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
man.
Take care.
See you, Ron.